Welcome to Business Success Navigators, brought to you by Empowering Business Inc. I'm Robyn Scobey, and today I'm here with Melissa. Melissa, can you introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are?
Yeah, hello. Thanks for having me. It's always a loaded question. Who are you? I recently launched a business called Nova Global. So we are a startup that is a membership community for soul-led professional women. And I have a background of 15 years of corporate business development and sales, as well as 9 years in network marketing and 8 years of coaching. And so this business is really a culmination of all the experience I've had in my professional life, as well as the personal and spiritual awakening that I've been on over the last decade. And really being a part of these sacred communities where I could show up as myself and not have to hide and really dismantle a lot of the shame that I didn't even realize that I was carrying, that was keeping me smaller and keeping my voice smaller and keeping me from really having the impact that I meant to have in the world. I've really found a lot of healing through community. And so we launched this particular community to help ambitious professional women really own all of them and feel safe to be seen. So it's been a really fun journey, but it's a wild ride as in a startup.
That's a really exciting. So you mentioned holistic. What does that actually mean for you? Because I know everybody has a different definition of what it means.
Yeah, I mean, I just look at it as a whole woman approach to business. So really looking at how are we doing personally, professionally, and spiritually. And so often as professional women, people care about the professional side of thing and really not in your professional well-being, but your professional performance and your professional success by traditional metrics. And what we know is that that doesn't work for women. And we know that women are not thriving in an environment where they have all the pressure. They're not allowed to be emotional. They have to segment themselves and feel like they have to hide, or they're just continuing to show up in an environment because they think they should, or it's the path they were told to take, and just what a toll that takes on our entire well-being. So I think that when we look at holistic, we're looking at the whole of a person.
That is very true. Because holistic means so much to so many different people, but looking at the whole, because women in business tend to also be wives and moms and your business plus you're volunteering in the community, because part of being a mom is you're normally part of hot lunch and you're doing so many other things, and to juggle all of that,
Yeah, it's a
it's a
lot.
lot.
Mm-hmm.
So Melissa, you've successfully merged personal growth and professional leadership in the Nova Global. Can you share some of your insights on how the holistic leadership, that whole operation works? And
Yeah, well, I think that if we're not taking into account our own personal development, we're missing a huge piece of the pie. Um, when I look at stepping into this, we'll call it a CEO role or founder role, when I have people working with me, if I'm only concerned about their performance, then I just don't even know how to operate that way. I understand that these people that are working for me and with me have complete lives, right? The things that are affecting their performance at work are happening at home. They're happening in their lives. They're happening because of childhood trauma. They're happening because of things happening with their children or their partners or another job, because all of our people are fractional. And so when I approach my role as a leader, I'm really looking at like, hey, we have this business to run, but also like what's going on for you and how do I support you and nurture you as a whole person. And so not only are we looking at the personal side of our staff, but also for me to be able to continue to elevate my game, to be able to hold the container energetically that I'm holding, as well as logistically. It's one of my main jobs is to work on myself, is to like stay plugged into professional growth, to stay plugged into personal growth, to stay plugged into spiritual growth. And I think they're not separate at all. But the more that I can be responsible for my response to things, the more that I can be aware of projections when they're happening, the more that I can stay grounded in the face of adversity, the better that the more I can show up inside of my role as the kind of woman that I want to be in this world.
That is a really detailed answer with a lot of different questions that just come to my mind right away. So do you normally work for a company then, or are you a company?
Well, I have done both. So I am a company. So I have worked, like I said, in corporate for 15 years. So I worked inside of very large organizations. I worked in medical device sales for a lot of that. So very high stress, very masculine dominated industry for a lot of my career. And then I worked with women for Beauty Counter, which is a direct sales company. So I worked as a consultant for a company, and then I own a company. So I've worn all the hats. Well, that's not every hat, but I've worn a lot of different hats.
Yes.
Yeah. So it gives a variety of perspective on what it's like being an employee versus a consultant versus an employer.
What would be some of your tips that you would give to a new entrepreneur, right? Because that's your last, like a new business owner that is just starting up, and what would be some of your advice to them?
Get the best community support you can possibly find. It is a roller coaster. Even if you're doing your own personal growth, even if you have all these tools, it's a roller coaster, and it is a personal growth journey in and of itself. It is like a spiritual journey in and of itself to be a founder. And I mean, this is why I built a company that is a community, because the greatest gift I've ever given myself and been able to receive is having the support of community around me at every season of life. And I believe it's the number one thing that we can cultivate that will help us not just to survive, but to really thrive as a business founder. So I would start there.
That is so true, because I know you've built a very vibrant, supportive community that empowers women. What are some of the
Yeah.
key elements that you believe are essential for creating and sustaining such a community, especially in today's digital age where life is just crazy?
Yeah, well, I think it's a few key components. One is feeling safe. So the way in which the container is held via either it's virtually or in person, there's a level of vulnerability that I mean, I don't lead everything. I lead some of the things, but really this is not about me. This is about bringing together an ecosystem of women and helping them showcase their gifts and make a difference through our community. And so there's a requirement to hold the space in a way that feels safe for women to show up. And that requires a level of vulnerability for the facilitator. And so that permission to not have to hide, to not have to be perfect, to not have to mask, like it has to be there first and foremost. The second is, I would say, connection based. A lot of communities are very transactional based. And we have brought in people that are actually, their jobs are to be connection facilitators. So they're trained at creating connected experiences to design our experiences. So that way people know that they're seen as a person, and that our job is to help facilitate relationship building, not just like you get this from this person and you make this transaction from this person. So really having like a deeper, meaningful connection would be the second one. I mean, those are the main two components of it. And I do think that ultimately underneath all of that, the values to which the organization, like our company holds, our company is our values. So when we are showing up, the way I embody it as a leader, the way our leadership team embodies it is what is happening in the community, right? So we have to show up with, not have to, but we get to show up with congruency. So what we say we stand for as far as deep connection, authenticity, right? Being bold, like we get to be that way as a team, so they can see congruency throughout. So they can trust that who we are, who we say we are, and they can trust that how we say we're going to deliver it is happening, and the types of things that, so trust is such a big component of it, because ultimately they're cultivating self-trust inside of the community. So there has to be those components for them to feel safe to be able to trust.
Absolutely. I can't disagree with you at all. Going back to your number one, where you talk about having to be vulnerable and to build that community, women in general are taught not to show our emotion. We're not taught, we're supposed to be these strong, and we are very strong, but we're always taught not to. So that's got to be a little bit of a challenge for you to be able to create that community, knowing that women generally don't want to be vulnerable and to show that emotion, to show that little bit of weakness, even though we all have it.
Yeah, I mean, we're modeling it. So I carried anxiety for decades. I was medicated for anxiety. I literally thought that's just like, oh, that's who I am. That's my family has it. I'm going to have that. I'm just going to be that way for the rest of my life. And I was always afraid to show myself. And so what I have done over a decade of showing up consistently in all these different personal growth modalities, in these safe spaces, in these women's circles, is I have learned how to feel okay doing that. And I've been on a real journey. Like I never would have done any of the things that I'm doing today. I was scared of public speaking. I was scared to like speak up. I was scared of all of these things. I was scared, really scared of other people's opinions. And so I take my personal journey and I share that. And so I'm modeling it. The people in our community are modeling it. We don't ask people to do anything that doesn't feel good for them. So you are allowed to participate however you want. So if you show up in a call and you're like, I actually feel the safest with my camera off and I don't want to speak, that's totally fine. If you want to, like, so everything's an invitation and you're allowed to show up whatever feels good for you. Now we model like what's possible and we invite people forward. And so there are a lot of people that are like starting to, maybe stand up at a local event and say something that has felt really scary and cry for the first time in front of people. And we're like, we just honor them. Right. And so it's really that journey of meeting people where they are and not like you can get out of your comfort zone, but we're not like trying to traumatize them, being like, get up and do a speech right now, like be a leader. It's like a gentler way of inviting them forward into visibility.
Hmm. When you're talking about that, but it's those little steps and those little milestones to be able
Yeah.
to sit in front with your camera on. Pre-COVID, I don't know if I would have been able to do this the same, right? Like just those little steps. I absolutely hear what you're saying about you have to honor them and respect what each person is going through.
Totally. And we also have several people that are nervous system experts and they do neurosomatics or different forms of nervous system work. And so we've actually had them come in and facilitate quite a bit. And we're going to continue to offer more programs around that to actually educate people of like, this is why this is happening in your body. Like this is how our nervous system works. And this is how we actually rewire it. And this is what it means. And so I know enough to be dangerous in that department, but that's why we bring in subject matter experts that are like, hey, this is okay. Like this is how we establish safety inside of community. And this is the physiological reasoning underneath what's going on here.
Hmm. And I think sometimes understanding and knowing you're not alone, because that's a big part.
Yeah.
When
Yeah.
you talk about the anxiety, I absolutely had anxiety growing up, but we never talked about it. It wasn't part of our normal life. So I hid it until I became an adult, and then I learned to live with it better. But
Mm-hmm.
having that safe place, I think, is always an amazing thing.
Mm-hmm.
Now, moving that into, so once people feel more confident and are more sure with themselves, I'm sure that affects their performance at work as well.
Yeah, of course. And they're both like, I think, I mean, we can look at corporate versus entrepreneurs. We service both, or we serve both types of women and creatives as well. And so what I found in even employees, which employers probably don't want to hear this, but like they might be taking on a passion project or launching that side business or that thing that they've like known they've wanted to do forever. And they're finally like, I'm going to go for it, right? I'm going to create a plan that feels safe and responsible, but like also I'm going to go for it. So we're seeing people like launching things or starting conversations about it or creating the thing that they've like had inside of them that they've wanted to bring forward, right? We also look at like when you have more regulation, when you have more balance, you're not projecting that onto your employees, to your team. So people that are showing up inside of work, they're making more conscious choices of how they're choosing to respond, or maybe the level of empathy that they're able to hold. And they're coming home and they're probably not taking it out on their kids or being that like, we become that impatient mom that's like, I don't like mental capacity for whatever you're doing right now. Like, I mean, that doesn't go away ever. Let's be real. But like, your ability to relate to the people outside of your job dramatically improves too. So like everything gets better. I think there's this idea that like if women are in their power, then somehow it's going to be harmful. But really, everyone wins.
It is. And I like even putting it to the business owner that has that employee that now feels empowered. Maybe they're starting a side job, but they're also going to be, I think, performing better at work because they become more confident and more sure in themselves and be able to portray exactly what they're looking for and how they want to get there. And I just see it as a huge, like just a rock rolling down a hill. It's just going to keep collecting.
It totally is. And I was sharing before we went live that this morning we had a beautiful, hard conversation with somebody that had been on our leadership team. And she actually spoke up and was like, I don't think this is a good fit anymore. And we were going to have that conversation. We all knew that, but she was like, this is the first time in my life because of the environment that we've cultivated as a team and the way in which we communicate. This is the first time in my entire life that I have ever spoken up about something. I just usually like stuff it down and I just keep going and I don't honor myself. And we're like, great. Like, I'm so glad that you spoke up. So it's like, sometimes the performance is better. Sometimes it means somebody can say it's misaligned and you can have an agreement and a real honest conversation about it versus like everyone just pretending things are fine or sweeping it under the rug or continuing to suffer alongside of one another. So I think there's benefits when somebody is taking a stand that might not be like, oh, great, you're like turning out more work for me. It's like, to me, however this goes, the fact that she feels empowered to use her voice is like the biggest freaking win I could ever imagine.
Absolutely. And it's not good for anybody if somebody's not comfortable or happy in their position. It's not a right fit. And sometimes acknowledging that is a huge milestone and it's very important.
Totally.
It is really hard for anybody to be able to stand up and say, I'm not happy, or I don't think this is a good thing, or I'd like to change. None of us like change. It's hard.
No. Yeah, it's so hard. But then it's, how are you met so it's not even just enough to use your voice, because you learn to use your voice by using your voice when you're shaky, when you're scared as shit, when you're like, that's how you learn. Right. And when you're met with judgment, resistance, like anger, it's so much harder because you're like, oh, it actually isn't safe. There's more proof, right? When you're met with love, when you're met with like, I understand, like when you're met with, just a courtesy of a conversation, then your body starts to realize I can actually do this. It is safe to speak up, but we have to practice in these environments where we more likely than not are going to get met with a positive response, right? I don't suggest going to practice at the highest stakes environment in your life for round one. Like, that's why I take it to community, take it to mentorship, take it to a mastermind, like practice there where you're like likely to be celebrated versus shot down. And then the more you do that, the more you can actually withstand if it doesn't go the way that you think it should.
Absolutely. So I know you have made significant shift from the corporate sales to founding the Nova Global and becoming a top leader in social impact direct sales. What are some of the strategies you recommend to women looking to make the similar transformation or changes in career?
Well, it starts with the decision to do it. I know that sounds very basic, but it's one of the most important things you can do is decide. And you don't necessarily, actually, you won't know the whole picture. So you just have to know enough to start. Make the decision to go for it. Know that you know enough to start and release attachment to having the entire plan figured out. Because I say this all the time. If somebody had told me, in order to leave your corporate career to build your dream business, these are all the things you would have to go through, I would have been like, nah.
And it's not even like you made it like round and nice.
All
it's
the
like
things I had to go through. Yeah, it's like you're in a snow globe sometimes and you're like, what's happening? Why is a toddler picked me up and shaking me? So you wouldn't do it. So So A, it's a decision. B, it's like trusting your vision, knowing that you aren't going to have all the steps lined out. And C, it's getting support. I'm a broken record on that, but like
Mhm.
you got to get support, right? Hire a coach, find a mastermind, like do something where you're going to be held accountable and where you have somebody to like, okay, you got this. Like you got to be in it together with other people because it's easy to give up. Not everyone has just like epic levels of resiliency. Like some of us, like
It is
it's
really hard though.
it's really hard. It's really hard. It's really worth it. And it's really hard. And I don't think people are honest enough about it. Like you go on the internet and you're like, oh my God, I made $1 million this month, or look at my cash flow this month. And like, you don't see the journey. You don't
Yeah.
see this person slogging it out for like 5 years before they're able to create $150,000, $1 million months. You compare your beginning to their ending and it feels so harmful. So decide, have a vision, let go of attachment to the how, and really just like get your support structure in place.
I find that so true. So when you're talking about nobody ever talks about how hard entrepreneurship is and owning your own businesses, I think it's very much like having kids. If we actually talked truthfully about what it's like to raise kids, nobody would do it. But yet it's the most rewarding there ever is,
Yeah. No, I've never
right?
looked at like a family, and I wasn't somebody I didn't have that like mom, like, oh my gosh, I'm like dying. I was born for this. Like I didn't have that in me. And so anytime I looked at like a family or somebody that was like, going in a Friday night or not going out on a Friday night or like navigating a tantrum in a restaurant, I was like, this looks awful. Like I rarely saw examples, especially in public, where you're like, I want that. Like that looks great and easy and fun.
Yeah. And owning a business is very similar, except it's
Yeah.
reversed, right? Like it looks like this wonderful thing, but it is really a lot of hard work. You invest everything you have, you risk so much, and you never get a true holiday. Your brain never turns off, right? Like you're always
Yeah.
thinking about your business, you're thinking about your clients or your customers and thinking about cash flow, good or bad. But you're always thinking. We entrepreneurs are built different.
Yeah.
But they're also the ones that make that decision right from the beginning. This is what I'm going to do. Here's my vision. This is what I'm going to move to. And this is how I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
But I
Yeah,
think
you really need to trust yourself to make decisions. Sorry to interrupt you. Yeah,
yeah,
it's like
no.
you really like it's so critical and like and this is part of, I think what we really stand for at the Nova is the more feminine side of business, and you're taught to ignore and override your intuition your whole life. Don't listen to that. You're hungry, you eat at this time, like do this at this time, like this is your, you don't listen to your body, override that. And so when you're an entrepreneur, and honestly, this applies to every single person, getting back in touch with that intuitive knowing and being able to make decisions from that place. Sometimes it makes perfect sense. And sometimes you're like, okay, I actually know I need to go this direction. It doesn't make sense to me right now, but I really trust myself to make these decisions.
Yes. And they're hard decisions, but they're decisions, right or wrong.
Yeah.
You're talking about community. This is the one I miss. I see most people missing is that they need to surround themselves with like-minded people. Really, again, going back to the kid analogy, first time mom, I joined all those mommy groups, kind of, right? But I did. I joined those mom groups and I
Yeah.
was around other moms that
Yep.
could guide me and help me, and they understood my black eyes and my complete exhaustion. But yet, when I started my first business, I never thought about joining into a mastermind or a group coaching or anything where I could talk to people. I could talk to people about my wins. I could talk to people about my hardships. And sometimes it wasn't. So I did join, obviously, a mastermind and I facilitate them now. But sometimes it's not even the entrepreneur that is coming that has that struggle, but they can relate to the other person that is talking. and you can feed off each other and you can give ideas and you can grow and know that you're not alone.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look at, like, I was an athlete my whole life, and I think about that a lot. And it's interesting. Like, I think about it more and more recently than I had in the past, of the parallel of, like, if you wanted to be an elite athlete, you would probably get the best equipment if you could. You would hire a coach. You would join an elite team if you could, right? You would get surrounded by the best of the best of the best athletes that help you elevate your game, and you would show up over and over and over and over again, and you would practice and you would fail and you would keep showing up. And, like, that's how it is, right? That's exactly how it is. And so I think we often think, like, oh, I'm supposed to be able to do this business thing, or I'm supposed to be able to, like, handle all of my emotions somehow on my own. And if you look at, like, anything else in life that you get really, really, really good at, you do it so many times on repeat, and it sucks a lot of the time. Like, you're not good at it at first, right? And you just have to keep showing up. And the more you can surround yourself by people who are playing at your game or higher, the more you elevate. Like, the best thing I've ever done is gotten in the room with women that are playing, like, at a really high level in life, all the way around. And, like, the more I'm around them, the more I'm like, okay, I'm qualified. I belong. I've got this. Like, let's go,
Mhm.
but without that, we just drown in isolation. It's really hard.
It is. And women tend to wear a lot of hats. Obviously, I don't have the experience on what men do, but like as a single mom and running a business and running a house and being in the community, I felt like I was always wearing a hat, never really listening to my body until I always say 40 is the new 20. Wish I would have known what I knew at 40, what I did at
Yeah.
12, right? Like, just help me out there. Right.
Yeah, for
But
sure. Yes.
it absolutely, as I got closer to 40, started to be able to listen to myself. No, I am tired. No, I can't be involved in everything. No, I'm not going to be perfect. I'm just going to keep trying. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yep.
And I'm
It's
just
so
going to
true.
keep putting one foot in front of the other.
Totally.
So, Melissa, if people wanted to get into contact with you and explore what you can do to help them more, how would they do that?
Our website is thenovaglobal.com, and we're at the Nova Global is our Instagram. And submitting the contact form on there is a great way to get in touch with us, or sending us a DM. We love having people join our events. So we do 3 virtual events a month, and we do 2 in person in Denver, and we're launching local ambassadors actually today. So we're going to have at least 25 women out all over the country doing local co-branded events. So if people want to, if they're leading events already and they love making a difference and they want to plug into a bigger ecosystem, then that's an opportunity for them as well. So we would invite you to join our events up to 2 times as a non-member, to check out our local ambassador program, and to just reach out and connect, say hi. I mean, there's so many ways you can support one another, even if it's just like a like on a post, or like energetically cheering for somebody, right? You don't have to necessarily join an organization to make the biggest difference. So I would just invite you to connect with us. We would love to meet you.
That's wonderful. Because I think you have so much more knowledge and so much more to give back right now, but we're out of time for today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for all that you do. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.